Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you all for tuning in. So tonight's video is called my point of entry albums, and these albums are the ones that was my introduction to these 10 awesome bands that I now love. So I wanted to share with you the albums that was my entry point for each band. So no, unfortunately, I'm not going to talk about Judas Priest in this video, and even if I was going to talk about Judas Priest, point of entry was not my actual point of entry for them. British Steel was. So I just couldn't think of a better thing to call this. So I picked out 10 of my point of entry albums, and we're gonna start things off for me at the beginning. And for Kiss, it was Destroyer. I had a friend in 5th grade and 6th grade who was obsessed with the band Kiss. I remember him wearing his Kiss shirt at least once a week in 5th grade. So I had a vague idea of who they were in 5th grade. And then in 6th grade, as he and I sort of became better friends as we went from elementary school to middle school, and he and I wound up in the same class with each other. So we were good friends in 5th grade. So in 6th grade, we really became kind of best friends. And it really got me interested in this band that he was all obsessed with. And I just remember him telling me all about Kiss and different songs that they had and whatnot. So I got really curious about what Kiss was all about. So my parents got me this album right here at Walmart one night, somewhere in the fall of 2001. And I chose this album because I had heard that this was supposed to be sort of one of their big albums. Plus it had a lot of the songs I recognized my friend talking about, like Detroit Rock City and God of Thunder and Shout It Out Loud and Beth. And so aside from like an actual greatest hits album, this seemed to be like a really good album to choose. So I fell in love with it instantly. Detroit Rock City, phenomenal song. King of the Nighttime World. Even before I bought my first Kiss album, I had seen the VH1 special behind the makeup for Kiss, and I recognized a few of these songs instantly from that VH1 special. King of the Nighttime World being one of them. Do You Love Me being another. Sweet Pain. So a lot of songs on here that I recognized from watching that VH1 special as well. So this one really was the biggest game changer for me. I really found the kind of music that I would go on to the next, gosh, how long ago has that been now? This is 2024, so like 23 years. Man, my, how time flies when you're having fun. But for the next 23 years, I would just basically become a big fan of rock music, and Kiss was the starting point for me, and this was my entry point to Kiss, Destroyer. So I will always love Destroyer for that reason, regardless of where I rank it in my Kiss rankings. So not long after I began to get into Kiss, my dad wanted me to listen to some Aerosmith, and he had a Aerosmith cassette in his car. The new one out at the time was this one right here, Just Push Play. So my dad gave me the cassette and asked me to listen to specifically Jaded, but overall he wanted me to listen to the whole thing and let him know what I thought about it. Instantly, Beyond Beautiful hooked me. I really liked that song. I thought the riff was really cool. That one got me interested. I recognized Just Push Play from the Dodge Ram commercials back in the day, and I loved the song. I kind of dug it in the commercials, and now that I knew what it was and I had the whole song, for the longest time, Just Push Play was actually my favorite Aerosmith song. And of course, Jaded was huge. I like that song a lot, and the rest of this album, the rest of this album really stuck with me. And to this day, maybe it's nostalgia because this was my entry point to Aerosmith. But as far as post Permanent Vacation Aerosmith goes, this is by far my favorite one, and probably the only one that I can listen to without skipping a song. Because Pump's a good album, but even Pump has a couple songs that I gotta skip. And everything else is, I don't know, like Get a Grip and Nine Lives and Music from Another Dimension. Those albums for me aren't even batting 500, so I tend to skip around on those ones a lot. But I still love this one to this day. This is one of my more favorite Aerosmith albums, and it was my point of entry to the band. So Another band that my dad introduced me to, I was riding in his truck with him one night, and he wanted me to listen to Bon Jovi's Crush. He had this on cassette tape. So by this point, I pretty much was just still Kiss and Aerosmith. Kiss was my favorite band in the world. Aerosmith was kind of my second favorite band. And I'd only been into those two bands for, I don't know, 6 months maybe. So, because this was early 2002. And this Bounce hadn't come out yet, so this was still sort of the new Bon Jovi album. And instantly, when my dad put this in, It's My Life, loved it right away. I really loved the very upbeat. It was very I don't know, kind of in your face. I love it right away. Then the rest of this album, we proceeded to listen to this album, and just everything. Say It Isn't So, Two Story Town, Next 100 Years, Just Older, Captain Crash to Beauty Queen from Mars. That was the one that really did me in. But the whole album, save for She's a Mystery, I never cared for, but that turned me into a Bon Jovi fan, and pretty much instantly Bon Jovi leapfrogged Aerosmith for me, and eventually they sort of took over for Kiss as well, and really through all the subtle changes my taste in music has gone through. And I say subtle because I've always been a rock fan, but my style of rock maybe has changed. I've gone from classic rock to more 80s. I had like my hair metal phase. I went to 90s alternative rock, your Foo Fighters, etc. Back to classic rock. So regardless of what it was, Bon Jovi's been a band that has always stuck with me. They've continued to put out awesome albums every couple of years, when a lot of these other bands that got me into music were not doing much of anything. So I really grew up on a lot of those albums. They're still pretty near and dear to me today. And this is a band that's just been with me ever since. I mean, they've become my favorite band for a reason. And it all started back in 2002 when my dad asked me to listen to this while we were riding in his truck. Crush. A lot of people in sort of my generation, I think, were introduced to Bon Jovi through Crush. That's a pretty, aside from like Slippery When Wet maybe, I think Crush is a pretty common point of entry album. So next we're going to go to Van Halen, and my introduction to Van Halen was Van Halen 1. I was at my buddy's house one weekend, and by this point in time, after 6th grade, he moved about 2 hours away. He moved in with his dad. So every now and then when he would come back up to his mom's, we would get together over the weekend and whatnot. And one weekend that he was up here, he put on this. He had this on cassette tape, and we played only the first half of it. I don't remember why, but I distinctly remember only listening to the first half of that cassette. And I loved it instantly. Like Running with the Devil, Eruption, You Really Got Me Now, I'm the One, left kind of an impression on me as well. And I loved it. I thought it was freaking awesome. So next chance I got, and this is kind of closer to Christmas time in 2002 at this point. My dad and I were at the mall, and he got me this Van Halen 1 on CD, and I remember listening to this on the way home, and I loved the whole thing. And I just remember my dad kind of telling me all about Van Halen as a band. I remember him telling me about them having a different singer named Sammy Hagar and whatnot. And gosh, I loved this album. I got really curious as to what they sounded like with Sammy Hagar, so my second album was 5150. I've never been a huge 5150 guy. It's not a bad album by any means. I mean, Van Halen, except for Van Halen 3, all the rest of them are good albums, but 5150's never been one of my favorite. But the second Dave album I got really blew me away. Like this one I don't know, this one blew me away, but then Fair Warning just blew me away even farther, I guess. So, but my point of entry was this first Van Halen album right here. So Van Halen, those four bands right there: Kiss, Aerosmith, Bon Jovi, and Van Halen. They're kind of like my, I don't know, Mount Rushmore of bands that got me into rock music. Those are my first original four favorite bands. I got into them. I collected all of their albums over the course of 2 years maybe. And then after that is sort of when the floodgates opened, and I started to get into a lot more bands and a lot faster time. So one of the next bands on my list was Metallica, and I first heard Metallica because Fuel was the theme song for NASCAR in 2003, and I loved the song. Every week whenever we would turn on the NASCAR race and that song would play, I freaking loved it. So I started looking up everything that I could about Metallica, and this being in the days before you could go on YouTube or Spotify or whatever and listen to whatever you wanted. There was a pretty narrow field of what was online for you to listen to. But I got online, and Metallica's website, they had their music videos up there. So whatever song had music videos, I could watch that. So I went to Fuel. I loved Fuel. I went to Sad But True, and I loved that song. Those are like the 3 songs from Metallica that really kickstarted my love for the band. First album that I bought from Metallica was the Black Album, because it had Sad But True on it. Of course, Enter Sandman, Holier Than Now, The Unforgiven. There's actually a lot of songs on here that took me a long time to get into. I liked this album when I first got it, but there's only a handful of tracks that I really loved. Tracks like some of the deeper ones, like Wherever I May Roam, Don't Tread on Me, Through the Never, Struggle Within. They took some time to grow on me. A Wolf and Man. Nowadays, I love the Black Album. I think the Black Album is awesome, and that was technically my entry point for Metallica, but I brought 2 others that I wanted to mention real quick, because I got all 3 of these albums really close together, probably in the span of just a week or 2. The Black Album, the next one I got was Reload, because it had Fuel on it. And again, much like the Black Album, I think a lot of these songs took a little bit of time to grow on me. I liked the first couple songs I liked right away: Memory Remains, Devil's Dance, Unforgiven 2, Better Than You. And then some of the deeper songs like Slither and Bad Seed and Prince Charming, they took some time to grow on me. I've grown to love Low Man Lyric. The only song in this album I haven't grown to love, or there's only 2 songs I haven't grown to love: Carpe Diem Baby and Attitude. I don't hate either. I just don't like either as much as the rest of the album. But that may be one of the reasons why I'm such a big fan of the Load albums, because Reload was my second favorite Metallica album. So I spent a lot of time sort of getting into this, and then eventually picking up Load, and spent a lot of time listening to that one too. And then the third one was Justice for All, because it had One on it, and much like the other ones, some songs really instantly jumped out at me. Blackened, Eye of the Beholder, Shortest Straw, Justice for All even. I think Harvester of Sorrow and Frayed Ends of Sanity took some time for me to get into. Otherwise, this one, right off the bat, once I got these 3 albums, this one was my favorite for the longest time. And this one remained my favorite Metallica album, really, for a couple of years, until Master of Puppets sort of overtook it. So those 3 albums I wanted to bring, because, like I said, I got them all in just like really quick succession, and I wanted to hit on all 3 of those Metallica songs that got me into the band. So shortly after getting into Metallica, Twisted Sister. I was watching VH special one time in early 2004, and Dee Snider was hosting it. Actually, it was the top whatever hair bands, and Twisted Sister came in at number 2. So as I'm watching this, I just really was kind of hooked by We're Not Gonna Take It. The music video, the song itself was catchy, the band's attitude, I mean, just everything clicked with Twisted Sister for me. So next time I got an album, I asked my mom, I gave her, she was going to, I don't know, the mall or wherever, and I wasn't going with her, so I asked her if she'd get me a CD. I gave her a handful of CDs I wanted, and she came home with this one, Twisted Sister, Stay Hungry. And it really was like love at first hear. Stay Hungry, We're Not Gonna Take It, Burn in Hell, Horatoria, The Price, Don't Let Me Down. I mean, this kick-started a good solid year and a half where Twisted Sister was my favorite band in the world, and nobody else even came close to them. And to this day, I still love Twisted Sister. They're one of my favorite bands. They're always going to be a special band for me because they were such a huge part of that era of my life. And this is the one that started it for me, Stay Hungry by Twisted Sister. Next up, I have Skid Row. My point of entry was the debut album. Now, unlike most of the rest of these albums on this list, the debut album for Skid Row has not stuck with me the way that most of these other albums have. I still love Destroyer and Just Push Play, Crush, Van Halen 1, Stay Hungry, all three of those Metallica albums I brought. I still like this one, don't get me wrong. I think Slave to the Grind and Subhuman Race blow it out of the water, though. This is still a good album, and this got me into Skid Row. It kind of made me want to get those other Skid Row albums. Songs like Piece of Me and 18 in Life and Youth Gone Wild. Here I Am, I think, is a really nice deep cut on here. Midnight Tornado is a good deep cut. I'm a little burnt out on I Remember You. I don't really need to hear that one ever again. I kind of dig Can't Stand the Heartache. Yeah, it's not a bad album at all. It's just when I got Slave to the Grind a few months after I got this one, I just never heard this one quite the same way again. So this is still a good album. Probably a lot of people are higher on this album than I am, but I still like it. I just love those other Skid Row albums with Sebastian Bach on it. I love them more. So, but still, this is the one that got me into those other two. So I gotta give some credit and some love where it's due for the debut Skid Row album. Shifting gears a little bit here. Up until this point in my life, I was really only into classic stuff, classic rock, 70s, 80s. I was kind of into hair bands at the time. You know, your Skid Rows and Cinderella and Rat and Twisted Sister probably was still my favorite band in the world at this point. Bon Jovi, of course, was still pretty high on my list. But my dad wanted me to listen to a CD that a friend of his lent him. And one of the greatest ironies of my musical life is that my dad is actually the one who got me into Breaking Benjamin, a band that is more from my generation, and I got my dad into a number of these other bands here, like Kiss and Twisted Sister, and I'm sure there's more examples, but those are probably the two big ones, at least so far. But he wanted me to listen to this album here. This was a lot different from anything that I was into at this point. This was, you know, obviously a lot more modern. This was released in 2004. We're probably into the summer of 2005 right now. And my dad wanted me to listen to the songs Forget It, Sooner or Later, and Breakdown. Those are the three songs that he really liked from this album, so he emphasized those. But when I listened to this album, the three songs that jumped out at me was Simple Design, Follow, and Firefly. And that sort of opened my ears up to some more modern rock music, at least modern for the time. And that would sort of begin to change my trajectory for a while. I would kind of start getting into more 2000s, you know, early 2000s, more 90s than anything. 90s, maybe some early 2000s, Breaking Benjamin, Foo Fighters, stuff like that. And for the next few years, that was sort of really what dominated my ears, I guess. So I dug this one quite a bit. I mean, the ones that my dad suggested I liked as well, but those three songs, Simple Design, Follow, and Firefly, really hooked me into Breaking Benjamin. And then I in turn went and got Saturate not too long after this, and then Phobia came out not too long after that. So been a Breaking Benjamin fan ever since. Next up is the Foo Fighters. As I kind of roughly about the same time, I was playing, I got a Madden video game for Christmas, and I don't remember which one it was, 05, maybe 04 or 5, 06, I don't know. I forget which one it was, but one of the songs on there was No Way Back from the Foo Fighters. So, and I loved it. Like, that song hooked me right off the bat. I eventually went into the settings and turned off every song except for No Way Back from the Foo Fighters and a Faith No More song. I forget which one, because everything else was like rap or pop or whatever. So I asked, my buddy and I used to exchange CDs for Christmas back in those days, and I said that this is the one that I wanted, and I wound up getting him, of all things, a Slayer CD that year. I remember it well. So instantly, like I really, the highs of this album really hit me right off the bat and made me want to get more into the Foo Fighters, even though I still feel like there's a lot of filler on this one. But songs like No Way Back and Best of You, DOA grabbed me right off the bat. On the acoustic side, Miracle and Cold Day in the Sun grabbed me right off the bat. Over time, I've grown to love the title track. Resolve's really good. What If I Do is really good. On the Mend I kind of like. Razor's pretty cool as well. So I've grown to like some more stuff on this album. But this one did sort of open me up to the Foo Fighters. I went and then got Color in the Shape. And the rest is history. The Foo Fighters became probably my favorite band for a little while. Still love the Foo Fighters to this day. And it's all because of In Your Honor. Next up, we have the Beatles. And though I was familiar with a lot of Beatles by this point over the years, I mean, you can't listen to a lot of rock music and not, at some point in time, become familiar with the Beatles. But I was familiar with a lot of Beatles big hits, you know, and I grew to like them. I think when I was younger, I just wasn't my thing. I grew to appreciate them and really like them for what they were, understand sort of how revolutionary they were for their time. And I think the more that I lightened up on the Beatles, the more I found myself really loving them. But when I heard this album for the first time, this one really hooked me. Rubber Soul. And I had heard in their entirety Sgt. Pepper, Abbey Road, and Revolver before this one. And I liked Revolver the best of those three. Still love the other two, you know, those are classic albums, don't get me wrong. But for whatever reason, this one just really did it for me. Drive My Car is a super cool song. Like, as soon as I heard that song, it's like, yeah, I can definitely hear how this band influenced Kiss. You know, I've been a Kiss fan for a long time at this point, and when I heard Drive My Car, it's like, that's where Kiss got their influence, their Beatles influence. Like, I can hear that in that song. You know, I'm trying to be careful saying that because I don't want anyone to think that I'm saying that, you know, the Beatles were influenced by Kiss. They couldn't have been, because the Beatles' career was finished by the time that Kiss even started. So, but yeah, I could definitely hear where Paul and Gene sort of got that Beatles, that sort of more rock and Beatles influence in their sound. Because Drive My Car sounds like something they would have covered in the early days to me. Like, I don't know, it's a cool song. Norwegian Wood's really cool as well. You Can't See Me. I love Nowhere Man. I love Think For Yourself. I like What Goes On. I'm Looking Through You is really cool. In My Life. This whole album is amazing. Great stuff right here. This one is the one that really, I mean, I was coming around the Beatles and liking them more and more, but this one really made me a fan. Rubber Soul. So I got one more, and this is the most recent one of this list here for me, and that is the band Rush. The first album that I ever bought from, well, I can't say that because I bought Moving Pictures at Goodwill a long time ago, and I liked it. I thought it was good, but maybe it just wasn't the right point in time for me to fall in love with Rush, I guess, because I listened to it, I liked it, but then it just sort of sat on my shelf, and as I was collecting more CDs and listening to other stuff, so I sort of, on a whim, picked up Roll the Bones at the record store because I always liked the song Roll the Bones. And that album, though it to me is not the most memorable Rush album in the catalog, it was enough to really sort of get me into it. So I went and I logged on to my YouTube Music next time I had a chance to listen to an album, and I picked this one, Fly By Night, for one, because that album cover is so cool. For two, because I love the title track, Fly By Night. Fly By Night is a song that doesn't get played quite as often as like your Lion Lights or your Tom Sawyers or your Spirit of Radios. I felt like I was more familiar with those songs. So I picked Fly By Night, and I guess I'm glad I did because I just was hooked immediately. Anthem, such a cool song, best I can. Beneath, Between and Behind has become one of probably my favorite songs on this album. By Torn the Snow Dog is Rush sort of getting that sort of proggy element into their music. You can really see where they're going to start progressing from here on out in that song, and it's a great song, super catchy. The middle section of the song is really fun as well. Fly By Night, of course, like I said, one of my favorite Rush songs. Making Memories is a really cool deeper cut on here. Even the weaker tracks like Rivendell and In the End are still good songs. So Fly By Night is a great album, and it is the one that really, I think, kick-started my love for Rush. So there you have it. Those are 10 of my point of entry albums. Let me know in the comments below if you're a fan of any of these bands, what album brought you into them. Feel free to drop any other point of entry albums that you have on top, off the top of your head as well. If you like this kind of content, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this in the future, and I will catch you next time.